So now I have to decide whether I'm mad or I'm not mad, rather than asking a much better question. And that's the piece that we're starting to unwrap here, is learning how to ask better questions. So I want you, if you have a card or if you have notes, this is the thing I want you to do. Let's ask better questions. So you have conclusions that you have hit on because thoughts and ideas have helped you to think about the way things are in your life. And you never have thought to go, you know what, that question is flawed from the foundation. You know, as of that morning, nothing had happened between Greg and I. Not a single thing had happened. But guess what? If I decided, yeah, I am, aren't you hurt that Greg was a little insensitive? And I'm like, you know what, I am a little hurt. Do you know it only takes 2 hours before I'm ragingly angry? And nothing has happened. Not one thing has happened. We already talked about it. We already dealt with it before. But now, has that ever happened to you? Right? Where you get stirred up about someone and you haven't, nothing's ever, you're getting stirred up because you're getting this little question that leads you down a path. And so that's what's happening with these friends. Is they mix it up with these, with these little beautiful statements, a little bit of a hook, and then the hammer. Yeah.
When that happens, is that always a sign that that's a wound that needs to be healed?
It's a really good question. So Dustin was asking, when that happens, is that a sign that a wound needs to be healed? Absolutely. When you get a thought in your head and it hooks you emotionally, and it hits on some of these areas, then absolutely what's really happening is that the Lord is inviting you to be healed. So we'll just take just a couple seconds. I'm going to have you get rid of that one, Greg, and we're going to take a moment over here. I don't know if we have oh, cool. So what do you do on your card where you wrote what you do when you experience injustice and offense? I'm guessing that none of you wrote anything positive. Did anybody write anything positive? Why not? Do you know why you didn't? Because I framed it that way. I framed it for you to go in the negative. You didn't have to. That's what happens. And that's what happens throughout Job. Is the conversation that will continue for the next 20 chapters will be framed in a way that causes you to go negative. So on your other side of your card, let's talk about the positive things that you do when you experience injustice and offense. Say, what are some of the positive things you do?
Pray. Pray.
Pray. Excellent, yes. Communicate. And communicate, can you give me any more on what that would be? Because that's super good, but I'm just wondering.
If you let your emotions out, let yourself be heard.
Okay, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
He said communicate the F word.
Feelings?
Feelings. The F word in our family is feelings. Yeah, that's the F feelings. Yeah, feelings. So good, right? Okay, what else?
Have selfless mercy with understanding, forgiveness.
Say it again.
To have selfless mercy, understanding, forgiveness, to bless and release.
Okay, so he said a whole bunch of things. I'm going to grab a couple of them. Forgiveness, which may or may not be your first step. Probably not. So many of us try to attempt to do that before we've ever even asked the question, what's really going on? But we'll get to that. Forgiveness, blessing.
I didn't take perspective.
Releasing them. What is it?
Take your perspective, step out and look at yourself.
Yes! Okay, so we're all tracking along the same lines. Love that. Okay, what else? What? Run. Thank you. Get some exercise. Get some endorphins going. Do an activity that is encouraging to you, where you often feel these emotions, safety, control, comfort, and a future. Do that activity and see if it might help shift you into a more reasonable frame of mind where you can deal with things. What? What was that? You making motions behind me? You were. I know you were. You weren't just writing down stuff.
I was.
Okay.
They know.
They know. I know they know. They know more than I know because it's a whole other thing you have going. Okay, anyone else?
Reagan, He was going eating.
Oh, yes.
What? Didn't hear it.
Eating. He said you were saying eating, maybe. That might be a positive. Put it on both sides. Eating is good and maybe a non. I'm going to put my eating over here as my non. But eating for some people can be super good. Okay, any other ones that you do?
Pause.
Pause.
Contemplate.
Contemplate. Our brain is neurologically wired to land in the conclusions that we landed in when we were a child. It is only when we ask new questions with God, to get that, not to God, with God, that our brain will start to neurologically rewire itself. And it is so amazing because research has been done that when I tell you a story, like when I told you about waking up in the morning, if I went into a little bit more detail, you would start to picture that event. You would start to picture that. And your brain would actually light up in identical ways as my brain lights up when I think about that story. It's this really cool mimetic thing that happens with our brains. When we start to tell stories, we start to have shared experiences. It's part of why every society has been a storytelling society, and now we tell stories through movies. Because it's a way that we have literally shared experiences because our brains light up and share the experience when we tell stories. What? Yes, empathy. So when we start talking with God instead of to God about what's going on, our brain starts to light up in the same way that God thinks. We can start to see our mind shift in the way that we think, and our brain literally rewires itself constantly. We are not hardwired in the wounding of our past. We are hardwired to continually change and grow and develop in our thinking. So the things that were true do not have to be true. The curses that we have experienced in generations, the curses that we've experienced in our relationships, do not have to stay. They can be switched to blessings. And so this conversation is about learning how to ask a whole new question. What is God doing in this situation? What is the reality of this injustice and this offense? So the question that I always say in here, in order to address some of these issues, is what is God doing in this situation? This is Graham Cook, by the way, who suggested this question. What is God doing in this situation that he couldn't do if I wasn't in this situation? Rather than asking, why is it happening? What did I do to deserve it? Who caused it? See, that's the triangle, the victim-victimizer triangle. Instead of asking those questions that lock you into a no way out, what does God want to be for me that he couldn't be if I wasn't in this situation? Second question I ask all the time, what's really going on here? Because rarely the situation on the surface is the situation that is the true reality that I'm experiencing. So there are two different pieces here. And asking that question is what switches you out of here and here. Now, why do we know all this? We know all this. I'm going to wrap up with this. What is the big, big challenge in all this? I'm going to have you flip the board, Greg.
Are you kidding me? We have a little room.
We have a little room. Thanks. You're so funny.
Okay.
So Anne was so good because she came to me because you have been processing a question all week. I asked a question last week. Have any of you else been processing it? The question was, is God in charge or in control? Is he in charge or is he in control? Anne came up to me. Do you want to share what you asked me?
I asked whether the question was a parallel question or an either-or question. If you ask the question like this, is God in charge or is he in control? That's an either-or question. Whereas if you could ask the question, is God in charge? Is God in control? That's kind of like two parallel questions that kind of, you think that they might mean the same thing. So I was trying to distinguish between what it meant to be in charge versus what it meant to be in control, so I could tell whether or not it was asking the same question, or was it asking an either or question? So I ended up asking a whole bunch of people what they thought of what it meant to be in charge versus what it meant to be in control, and got some really interesting answers.
I bet. Anybody process that this week?
What I figured out is that with free will, it causes us to be like pawns on a chessboard, and God's more like a chess master for it cosmically. So it's like you make this move, he has to make this move. So it's not so much as he's in complete control, but he can guide you in the direction he wants you.
Okay, so that's a real, okay, so that, how many hold that idea? It's one idea of how this whole thing works. I mean, there's such a huge scope. So we're going to wrap it up here. We'll come back with our next 2 chapters. So if you want to read the next 2 chapters in Job, they're hard, 5 and 6. You might want to venture into 7. They're challenging chapters. I'm just going to tell you, these are the chapters that like get at the core of those questions of control and future and safety, and they are unsettling. So this is not your feel-good kind of reading. This is not the I'm going to hang out with the Lord and I'm going to do my best. So don't read them if you're not in a place where that's a good place for you to be, because these are challenging chapters to read. But if you're like, you know what, I want to have conversation with the Lord. I want to dig into these kinds of questions, and I really want him to show up for me. I don't want an answer that I think. I want him to show up, and while he might not answer the question I'm asking, he is going to give me answers and show me who he really is. That's really kind of what this is all about. So on this last part is control and in charge. We are going to kind of be unwrapping that in the next 3 chapters, but here's what I will say about this one thing. Most people have tended to think that they cannot be powerful people because they thought that powerful meant to dominate others. Being a powerful person means that you no longer have to dominate others. Being a powerful person means that you have the capacity to maintain yourself, and you don't need other people to make you safe. You don't mean other people, so you no longer need to control or dominate other people. But many people have put power and control as the same thing. And that has been the confusion that has wrecked so many marriages, so many parent-child relationships, as we try to navigate how to be healthy with each other. So this is what we'll be going into, is control and in charge in the next 3 chapters of Job. As we unwrap, like, what is God really doing in our lives, and what are our coping mechanisms? What do we do when we feel out of control? Because it's the best way that we can identify with how Job felt. If everything was stripped away, what do you have left about what you think about anything? And if everything you thought was right appeared in the moment to be not right, where do you go with that? So super good, right? Hey, I love it. Okay. Hey, so normally Lindsay and Jared do our practice. And actually, Adrian was going to jump in and do practice with us this week, and he's actually not well. So we're going to do it, babe. You